The bass was so loud I could feel it in my chest. Every beat shook the marble floors of Marcus's mansion, rattling the champagne glasses on the gold-trimmed tables. I was standing on the second-floor balcony, looking down at the party below. My teammates were everywhere. Some were dancing with women I'd never seen before. Others were huddled in corners, laughing too loud, drinks in hand. The whole scene felt like a dream, a good dream, the kind you don't want to wake up from. I took a sip of my drink and let the moment sink in. We'd just come off a huge win. Playoffs were around the corner. My stats were climbing. My agent had called me earlier that week to tell me another endorsement deal was on the table. Everything was moving fast. Too fast, maybe, but I wasn't complaining. This was the life I'd worked for. The life I'd dreamed about since I was a kid, shooting hoops in my driveway with a milk crate nailed to a wooden post. Marcus walked up beside me, grinning like he owned the world. And in a way, he did. His contract was bigger than mine. His house was bigger than mine. Hell, even his smile was bigger than mine. "Yo, you good?" he asked, clapping me on the shoulder. "Yeah, man, I'm good." "You sure? You look like you're thinking too hard. This is a party, bro. Relax." I laughed and nodded. I know. Just taking it all in." "Well, take it in downstairs. There's some people I want you to meet." I followed him down the spiral staircase, weaving through the crowd. The air smelled like expensive cologne and too much perfume. Everyone was dressed like they were about to walk a red carpet. I recognized a few faces, a rapper whose songs I'd heard on the radio, an actress I'd seen in a movie once, a couple of influencers with their phones out, recording everything. This was my world now, and I was still getting used to it. Marcus introduced me to a group of people I didn't know. We shook hands. We exchanged small talk. They told me they loved watching me play. I smiled and said thank you. It was all surface level, all polite, all fake, but that's how it worked. You smiled. You played the part. You didn't let anyone see the cracks. I'd been playing this game for 3 years now. 3 years since I got drafted. 3 years since my life changed overnight. I remembered the day like it was yesterday. Sitting in the green room with my mom, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might explode. Hearing my name called, walking up on that stage, shaking the commissioner's hand, holding up the jersey with my name on the back. My mom cried. I cried. We'd made it. But nobody tells you what comes after. Nobody tells you about the pressure, the expectations, the people who suddenly want to be your friend, the people who suddenly need something from you, the loneliness that creeps in even when you're surrounded by thousands of people screaming your name. Nobody tells you that the higher you climb, the harder it gets to breathe. After a while, I excused myself and stepped outside onto the back patio. The music was muffled out here. The air was cooler. I could finally hear myself think. I pulled out my phone and checked my messages. A few texts from people I hadn't talked to in months. Old friends from high school who only reached out when they needed something. Cousins I barely knew asking for money. A missed call from my mom. Another missed call from my agent. I'd call them back tomorrow. Tonight, I just wanted to enjoy the moment. I leaned against the railing and looked out at the city lights below. Los Angeles stretched out in every direction, glowing like a galaxy. It was beautiful. It was overwhelming. It was everything I'd ever wanted, and it was lonely as hell. I thought about calling someone, anyone, just to talk, just to feel connected to something real. But who would I call? My mom? She'd just worry. My agent? He'd just talk business. Jasmine? No. That ship had sailed, and crashed, and burned. Then my phone rang. The name on the screen made me pause. Mrs. Calloway, my neighbor, the sweet old lady who lived next door to my house. She was the one who watered my plants when I was on the road. She fed my dog. She kept an eye on things. I'd given her a spare key years ago, back when I first bought the place. She was like a grandmother to me. Always worried, always checking in. I answered. "Hey, Mrs. Calloway, everything okay?" Her voice was shaking. "Honey, I don't want to scare you, but I think something's wrong." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "I'm looking at your house right now. The lights are on, all of them, and I heard voices, loud voices, like people arguing. I felt my heart start to race." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure, baby. I wouldn't call you if I wasn't. I know you're out tonight, but I thought you should know. I almost called the police, but I wanted to check with you first. I turned away from the party and walked toward the edge of the patio, my hand gripping the phone tighter. Mrs. Calloway, I'm not home. Nobody should be in my house. That's what I thought. That's why I'm calling. My mind was spinning. I'd locked everything. I always did. The security system was on. The doors were bolted. The only people who had keys were me, my agent, and... No. I shook my head. I didn't want to go there. Not yet. Did you see anyone? Did you see a car? No, honey. I just saw the lights, and I heard the voices through the window. I'm scared to get too close. Don't go near the house. Stay inside. Lock your doors. I'm leaving right now. Okay, be careful, baby. I hung up and stood there for a moment, staring at the screen. My hands were trembling. My chest felt tight. I tried to think logically. Maybe I'd left a light on. Maybe the security system had malfunctioned. Maybe it was nothing. But the voices. She'd heard voices. I turned and walked back inside, pushing through the crowd. The music felt louder now, the lights felt brighter. Everything felt wrong. I found Marcus near the bar, laughing with a group of people. Yo, Marcus, I gotta go. He frowned. What? Already? We just got started. Something came up. I'll explain later. Everything good? I don't know yet. He looked concerned, but he didn't push it. All right, man. Be safe. I didn't say goodbye to anyone else. I just walked out the front door, got in my car, and drove. The streets were empty. It was past midnight. The city lights blurred past me as I sped down the highway, my mind racing faster than the engine. I kept replaying Mrs. Calloway's words in my head. The lights are on. I heard voices. Who would be in my house? I thought about my agent, David. He had a key. He'd been to my place plenty of times, but he would have called. He would have told me. David was a lot of things, but he wasn't reckless. He was calculated. Every move he made was part of a plan. If he was at my house, there was a reason, and he would have told me. Then I thought about Jasmine, my ex. We'd broken up 6 months ago, but it hadn't been clean. Nothing with Jasmine was ever clean. She'd accused me of changing, of choosing the game over her, of letting the fame get to my head. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had changed. But I couldn't deal with that right now. She still had a key. I'd never asked for it back. After the breakup, I'd thought about it. I'd even drafted a text a few times, but I never sent it. Part of me didn't want to believe it was really over. Part of me thought maybe we'd figure it out. Maybe we'd find our way back to each other. But we never did. And then there was Dre, my best friend since high school. My teammate. My brother. He had a key, too. I'd given it to him years ago, back when we were both nobodies, sleeping on couches and dreaming about the NBA. We'd promised each other we'd make it, and we had, together. But lately things had been different. He'd been distant, quiet. We didn't talk like we used to. I'd noticed it, but I'd brushed it off. I figured he was just dealing with his own stuff. Everyone had their battles. Dre had always been the quiet type. Even in high school, he was the one who kept to himself. He didn't need the attention. He didn't need the spotlight. He just needed the game. And he was good. Damn good. Good enough to get drafted 2 years after me. Good enough to end up on the same team. When he signed with us, I was the happiest I'd been in years. Finally, I had someone I could trust. Someone who knew me before all this. Someone who remembered where we came from. But now I wasn't so sure. I pulled into my neighborhood and slowed down. The streets were dark and silent. My house was at the end of the block, tucked behind a row of tall trees. As I got closer, I saw it. The lights. Every single light in the house was on. The living room, the kitchen, the upstairs bedrooms, even the garage. Mrs. Calloway was right. I parked across the street and turned off the engine. My hands were still shaking. I sat there for a moment, trying to calm myself down, trying to think. Then I saw movement. A shadow passed by the living room window. Someone was inside. I reached for my phone and opened the security app. The cameras were supposed to send alerts whenever there was motion, but there was nothing. No notifications, no alerts. The system had been disabled. Whoever was inside knew what they were doing. I stepped out of the car and walked toward the house, my heart pounding in my ears. The front door was closed, but it wasn't locked. I could see the gap between the door and the frame. I pushed it open slowly. The house was silent. The lights were blinding. I stepped inside and looked around. Everything looked normal. The furniture was in place. Nothing was broken. Nothing was stolen. But someone was here. I walked through the living room, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood floor. The kitchen was empty. The dining room was empty. I moved toward the hallway that led to the stairs. That's when I heard it. A voice, low, muffled, coming from upstairs. I froze. It was a man's voice. I couldn't make out the words, but I knew it wasn't a stranger. It was familiar, too familiar. I walked up the stairs slowly, each step creaking under my weight. The voice got louder, clearer, and then I heard another voice. A woman's voice. Jasmine. My stomach turned. I reached the top of the stairs and walked toward my bedroom. The door was cracked open. The light was on inside. I pushed the door open, and I saw them. Jasmine was sitting on my bed, her phone in her hand, tears streaming down her face. She looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. She looked broken, defeated, like someone who'd been carrying a weight too heavy for too long. Across from her, standing by the window, was Dre. He was staring out at the street, his hands in his pockets, his shoulders tense. He didn't look at me. He didn't move. He just stood there, like he was waiting for something. Or maybe he was just avoiding the inevitable. They both turned to look at me. For a moment, nobody said anything. The silence was suffocating. I could hear my own heartbeat. I could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning. I could hear everything except the words I needed to hear. Then Dre spoke. Man, I can explain. I stared at him, at her, at the room, at everything I thought I knew. My voice came out colder than I expected. Explain what, Dre? Explain why you're in my house. Explain why she's here. Explain why my security system is off and my neighbor thinks someone's robbing me. He finally turned to look at me. His face was hard, guarded, but there was something else there too, something I couldn't quite read. It's not what you think, I laughed. It was a bitter, hollow sound. It never is, right? That's what everyone says. It's not what you think. It's not what it looks like. But you know what, Dre? I don't know what to think anymore. Because the one person I thought I could trust is standing in my bedroom with my ex-girlfriend, and neither of you thought to tell me you were coming over. Jasmine stood up, wiping her eyes. Please, just let us explain. I know this looks bad. I know you're angry, but we didn't come here to hurt you. Then why did you come here? She looked at Dre. He looked at her. And in that moment, I saw it. The connection, the history, the secret. Whatever they were about to tell me, it was big, and it was going to change everything. Dre took a step forward, his hands raised like he was trying to calm a wild animal. We came here because we needed to talk to you, away from everyone else, away from the team, away from the media, just us. About what? He hesitated. Jasmine looked down at her phone, her hands shaking. About David, my agent. I frowned. What about him? Dre exhaled slowly like he was preparing himself for what came next. He's been lying to you. About a lot of things. I felt my chest tighten. What are you talking about? Jasmine finally looked up at me, her eyes pleading. David's been using you. He's been making deals behind your back, taking money that should have gone to you, cutting corners. And he's been threatening people to keep quiet. I shook my head. That's insane. David's my agent. He's been with me since day one. He's the one who got me my first contract, my first endorsement deal. He's the reason I'm where I am. No, Dre said, his voice firm. You're the reason you're where you are. David just took credit for it, and now he's trying to control everything. Your career, your money, your life. I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't believe it. Why should I trust you? You broke into my house. You turned off my security system. You're standing here with my ex-girlfriend telling me some conspiracy theory about my agent. Why the hell should I believe a word you're saying? Jasmine stepped forward, holding out her phone. Because I have proof. I stared at the phone in her hand, at the tears on her face, at Dre standing behind her, his jaw clenched, his eyes filled with something I hadn't seen in years. Desperation. Show me, I said. She handed me the phone, and what I saw on that screen made my blood run cold. Emails, text messages, bank statements, all from David, all showing exactly what they'd just told me. He'd been skimming money off my endorsement deals. He'd been negotiating contracts without my knowledge. He'd been paying people off to keep quiet. And he'd been threatening anyone who got in his way, including Jasmine, including Dre. I looked up at them, my hands shaking. How long have you known? Jasmine's voice broke. Months. I found out by accident. I was at your place one night and David called. You were in the shower. He left a voicemail. I heard it, and I started digging. I found more, and the more I found, the worse it got. Why didn't you tell me? She looked away, her eyes filling with tears again. I tried, but every time I brought it up, you defended him. You said I was being paranoid, that I was jealous of your success, so I stopped trying. And then we broke up. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. And you? I turned to Dre. When did you find out? 2 months ago. Jasmine reached out to me, showed me everything. I didn't believe her at first, but then I started paying attention, and I saw it too. The way David talked to you, the way he controlled everything, the way he made you feel like you owed him. I sank down onto the bed, my head in my hands. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not when everything was finally going right. What do? Dre sat down beside me. You fire him. You get a lawyer. You take back control. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. You just have to be willing to walk away. I looked at him, at Jasmine, at the phone still clutched in my hand. They'd risked everything to tell me this. They'd broken into my house. They'd turned off my security. They'd waited for me in the dark, knowing I'd probably lose my mind when I found them. They did all that because they cared, and I'd almost lost them both. I looked at Jasmine. I'm sorry, for not listening, for not believing you. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I just wanted to protect you. I turned to Dre. Why didn't you just call me? Because David's been watching you, listening to your calls, reading your texts. If we'd called, he would have known, and he would have done something to stop us. I felt a chill run down my spine. He's been spying on me? Dre nodded. That's why we came here. It was the only place we could talk without him knowing. I stood up, pacing the room. So what now? He's going to find out eventually, and when he does, he's going to come after me. After all of us. Jasmine stood up too. Then we get ahead of him. We go public. We expose everything. We make sure he can't hurt you or anyone else ever again. I stopped pacing and looked at her. You'd do that? Even after everything? She smiled sadly. You think I'd let some sleazy agent destroy the person I used to love? Not a chance. I felt something crack inside me, something that had been holding me together for months. I walked over to her and pulled her into a hug. She didn't resist. She just held on, her body shaking with sobs. I'm sorry, I whispered, for everything. Me too. Dre stood up and put a hand on my shoulder. We're going to get through this, together. I nodded, pulling away from Jasmine and wiping my eyes. Okay, let's do it. Let's take him down. They both smiled. And for the first time in months, I felt like I wasn't alone. We spent the next 2 hours going through everything. Every email, every text, every bank statement. Jasmine had been thorough. She'd documented everything. And now we had enough evidence to bury David. But it wasn't going to be easy. David was powerful. He had connections. He had money. He had leverage. And he wasn't going to go down without a fight. As the sun started to rise, we finally called it a night. Jasmine left first, promising to send everything to a lawyer she trusted. Dre stayed behind, helping me secure the house and reset the security system. You good? He asked as he was about to leave. I don't know, I admitted, but I will be. He nodded. That's all we can ask for, man. Just take it one day at a time. He left, and I was alone again. I walked upstairs to my bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. The room felt different now, like something had shifted. Like I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. I pulled out my phone and stared at David's name in my contacts. I could call him right now, confront him, demand answers. But I didn't, because I knew the truth now. And the truth was, I'd been blind. I'd been so focused on the game, on the money, on the fame, that I'd missed what was right in front of me. I'd trusted the wrong people. I'd pushed away the ones who actually cared. And now, I had to fix it. I lay back on the bed and closed my eyes. Tomorrow, the real fight would begin. But tonight I just needed to rest. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw David's face. That confident smile. The way he'd shake my hand after closing a deal. The way he'd pat me on the back and tell me I was going places. The way he'd made me feel like I owed him everything. And maybe I had believed it. Maybe I'd been so grateful for the opportunity so desperate to prove I belonged that I'd never questioned him. I'd just trusted, blindly. That was my mistake. By the time the sun came up, I was sitting in my kitchen, staring at my phone. I'd read through every email Jasmine had sent me, every text, every bank statement. The evidence was overwhelming. David had been stealing from me for over a year. Small amounts at first, amounts I'd never notice, but over time, it had added up. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, money that should have been mine. And it wasn't just the money, it was the control, the manipulation, the way he'd isolated me from everyone who cared about me. Jasmine had tried to warn me, and I'd pushed her away. Dre had tried to talk to me, and I'd brushed him off. Even my mom had asked questions about David, and I'd defended him. I'd been so stupid. My phone buzzed. A text from Dre. "You up?" I typed back. "Yeah. Meet me at the gym in an hour. We need to talk." I didn't argue. I just grabbed my keys and left. The gym was empty when I arrived. It always was at this hour. The team didn't practice until later in the afternoon, so the morning was reserved for guys who wanted to put in extra work. I used to come here all the time, back when basketball was the only thing that mattered, back when I was hungry, back when I was pure. Now I wasn't sure what I was. Dre was already there, shooting free throws. He didn't look at me when I walked in. He just kept shooting, one after another. Swish, swish, swish. I grabbed a ball from the rack and joined him. We shot in silence for a while, the only sound the echo of the ball bouncing off the court. Finally, Dre spoke. "You ready for this?" "I don't know." "That's not good enough, man. You need to be sure. Because once we start this, there's no going back." I caught the ball and held it, staring at the rim. "What if I'm not strong enough?" Dre stopped shooting and looked at me. "You are. You just don't know it yet." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that I could stand up to David, that I could take back control of my life, but a part of me was terrified. Terrified of what David might do. Terrified of what I might lose. "He's going to come after me," I said. "He's going to try to destroy me." "Probably. But that's why you have us. Jasmine's already talked to a lawyer. A good one. Someone David can't touch. And I've got your back, no matter what." I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw the same kid I'd grown up with, the same kid who'd stayed up late with me, shooting hoops under broken streetlights, the same kid who'd promised we'd make it out together. And we had. But somewhere along the way, I'd forgotten that. "I'm sorry," I said, "for pushing you away, for not listening." Dre shook his head. "Don't apologize. Just promise me you won't let anyone control you like that again." "I promise." He nodded, satisfied. "Good. Now let's go handle this." We left the gym and drove to my house. Jasmine was already there, waiting in her car. When she saw us, she got out and walked over, a folder in her hand. "I talked to the lawyer this morning," she said. "His name is Marcus Reed. He specializes in cases like this. He said he can take David down, but we need to move fast." "What do we need to do?" I asked. "First, you need to fire him, officially, in writing. Then we file a lawsuit. We go after him for fraud, embezzlement, and breach of fiduciary duty." I felt my stomach twist. "And what if he fights back?" "He will," she said bluntly. "But we have the evidence. He can't deny what's in those emails, what's in those bank statements. He's going to lose. It's just a matter of how ugly it gets." I took a deep breath. "Okay, let's do it." Jasmine handed me the folder. "This is the termination letter. Reed drafted it this morning. All you have to do is sign it and send it to David. Once he gets it, it's over. You're free." I opened the folder and read the letter. It was cold, legal, final. Seeing the words on paper made it real in a way nothing else had. I grabbed a pen and signed my name at the bottom. "Now what?" I asked. "Now we wait," Jasmine said. "Reed will file the lawsuit this afternoon. By tonight, David will know what's coming." Dre crossed his arms. "And he's going to lose his mind." I knew he was right. David wasn't the type to go down quietly. He was going to fight, and he was going to fight dirty. We spent the rest of the morning preparing. Jasmine helped me change all my passwords, my bank accounts, my email, my social media. Everything David had access to, we locked him out of. Dre stayed with me the whole time, making sure I didn't back out, making sure I stayed focused. By noon, it was done. I was officially free of David Chen, but I didn't feel free. I felt exposed, like I'd just ripped off a bandage and left the wound open to the world. My phone rang. I looked at the screen. David. My heart started pounding. He knows, I said. Jasmine and Dre looked at each other. Don't answer, Jasmine said. But I couldn't help myself. I needed to hear his voice. I needed to know if he was going to come at me or if he was going to try to talk his way out of it. I answered. Hello? What the hell do you think you're doing? David's voice was cold, furious. I'm taking back my life, he laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound. You think you can just fire me? After everything I've done for you? I made you. Without me, you'd still be playing in some third-rate college league, hoping for a shot at the G League. You didn't make me, I said, my voice steady. I made myself. You just took advantage of it. Is that what they told you? Jasmine? Dre? Did they fill your head with lies? They told me the truth, something you've never done. There was a pause. When David spoke again, his voice was quieter, more dangerous. You're making a mistake, a big one, and when this is over, you're going to regret it. Maybe, but at least I'll be free. I hung up. Jasmine and Dre were staring at me. How do you feel? Dre asked. Terrified, I admitted, but also lighter. Jasmine smiled. That's because you just took the first step. The rest of the day was a blur. Marcus Reed filed the lawsuit just like he said he would. By evening, the news had leaked. My phone was blowing up with calls from reporters, from teammates, from people I hadn't talked to in years. Everyone wanted to know what was going on. Everyone wanted a statement. I ignored them all. Instead, I sat in my living room with Dre and Jasmine watching the news coverage. My name was everywhere. The headlines were brutal. NBA star sues agent for fraud. Rising star accuses agent of embezzlement. David Chen. Trusted agent or con man? It was surreal. Seeing my life played out on national television, seeing people I'd never met debate whether I was telling the truth or just trying to get out of a bad contract. This is insane, I muttered. This is what happens when you go up against someone powerful, Jasmine said. They try to control the narrative, but we have the truth on our side. Does the truth even matter anymore? I asked. Dre leaned forward. It matters. You just have to be patient. But patience had never been my strong suit. My phone rang again. This time, it was Coach Williams. I hesitated, then answered. Coach. Son, what the hell is going on? His voice was rough, concerned. I've been getting calls all day. The front office is freaking out. They want to know if this is going to affect the team. I don't know, Coach. I'm just trying to do what's right. I get that. But you need to understand something. This isn't just about you anymore. This affects all of us. The organization, your teammates, me. We're all connected. I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. I'm sorry, Coach. I didn't mean for it to get this big. I know you didn't, but it did. And now we all have to deal with it. Just be smart, okay? Don't do anything stupid. I won't. Good. And for what it's worth, I believe you. I never liked that guy. I smiled despite everything. Thanks, Coach. He hung up and I set the phone down. The team's worried, I said. Of course they are, Jasmine said. But that's not your problem. Your problem is making sure David doesn't destroy you before this goes to trial. How long will that take? Months, maybe a year. It depends on how much he fights. A year. A year of this. A year of headlines and accusations and uncertainty. I didn't know if I could handle it. The next few days were some of the hardest of my life. The media frenzy didn't die down. If anything, it got worse. Reporters camped outside my house. They followed me to practice. They shouted questions at me every time I stepped outside. I stopped reading the comments online. I stopped watching the news. I stopped looking at social media. It was the only way to stay sane, but I couldn't escape it completely. The whispers followed me everywhere. In the locker room, on the court, at the grocery store. People looked at me differently now. Some with pity, some with suspicion, some with curiosity. I hated it. The only people who didn't treat me like a spectacle were Dre and Jasmine. They stayed by my side through all of it. Dre would show up at my house unannounced just to check on me. Jasmine would call me every night just to make sure I was okay. They were the only reason I didn't fall apart. A week after I filed the lawsuit, Marcus Reed called me. We need to meet, he said. David's team just filed a motion to dismiss. They're claiming you don't have grounds for a lawsuit. Can they do that? They can try, but they won't win. The evidence is too strong. Still, we need to be prepared. Can you come to my office tomorrow? Yeah, I'll be there. The next day, I sat in Marcus Reed's office, listening as he explained the legal battle ahead. It was complicated, technical, full of jargon I didn't understand. But the gist was clear. This was going to be a long, brutal fight. David's not going to make this easy, Marcus said. He's going to come at you with everything he's got. He's going to try to discredit you, to paint you as ungrateful, as someone who's trying to back out of a contract because you didn't read the fine print. But that's not true, I said. I know, and we'll prove it. But you need to be ready for it to get ugly. I nodded. I'm ready. Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying me. Are you? Because once we go to trial, your entire life is going to be under a microscope. Every decision you've ever made, every person you've ever trusted, it's all going to be fair game. I thought about that. About all the mistakes I'd made, all the people I'd hurt, all the things I wasn't proud of. I don't have a choice, I said. If I don't do this, he wins. And I can't let that happen. Marcus smiled. Good. Then let's win this thing. I left his office feeling both determined and terrified. I knew the road ahead was going to be hard, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was fighting for something that mattered. I was fighting for myself. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. You should have stayed quiet. I stared at the message, my blood running cold. I didn't recognize the number, but I knew who it was from. David, or someone working for him. I showed the text to Dre. He's trying to scare you, Dre said. It's working. Don't let it. That's what he wants. He wants you to back down, to give up, but you can't. What if he does something? Then we deal with it. But you can't live your life in fear. I knew he was right, but that didn't make it any easier. Over the next few weeks, the threats continued. More texts, more calls from blocked numbers. Once, someone slashed my tires. Another time, someone spray-painted my driveway. I reported it all to the police. They said they'd investigate, but I knew they wouldn't find anything. David was too smart to leave a trail. But the harassment had an effect. I started looking over my shoulder everywhere I went. I stopped going out alone. I stopped trusting people I didn't know. I was becoming paranoid, and I hated it. One night I was lying in bed, unable to sleep, when my phone rang. It was Jasmine. Are you okay? She asked. Not really. Do you want me to come over? I hesitated. Part of me wanted to say yes. Part of me wanted to be alone. Yeah, I said finally. I'd like that. She showed up 20 minutes later, a bag of takeout in her hand. I figured you hadn't eaten, she said. She was right. I hadn't. We sat on the couch, eating in silence. It was comfortable, easy, like old times. I'm sorry, I said after a while. For what? For dragging you into this, for putting you in danger. She shook her head. You didn't drag me into anything. I chose to be here, and I'd choose it again. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I realized how much I'd missed her, how much I still cared about her. Why? I asked. Why are you doing this? She set down her food and turned to face me. Because I know who you are. Not the guy the media sees. Not the guy David tried to control. The real you. The guy who used to stay up late with me talking about his dreams. The guy who cried when his mom couldn't afford his basketball shoes. The guy who promised he'd never forget where he came from. Her eyes were shining with tears. That's the guy I fell in love with, and that's the guy I'm fighting for. I didn't know what to say, so I just pulled her into a hug and held her tight. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me yet, she said, pulling back with a small smile. This isn't over. She was right. It wasn't over. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I was going to be okay, because I wasn't alone anymore. I had people who believed in me, people who were willing to fight for me, and that was more than I'd ever had before. The next morning, I woke up with a new sense of purpose. I wasn't going to let David win. I wasn't going to let him control my life anymore. I was going to fight, and I was going to win, no matter what it took. The weeks that followed were brutal, not just because of the lawsuit or the media attention, but because everything I thought I knew about my life started to fall apart. It started small. A teammate who wouldn't look me in the eye, a sponsor who suddenly pulled out of a deal, a journalist who wrote a hit piece questioning my character, little cracks that spread until the whole foundation started to crumble. I showed up to practice one morning and the energy in the locker room was different, cold, distant. Guys who used to joke around with me now kept their distance. Conversations stopped when I walked in. Eyes darted away. Marcus, my teammate who'd thrown the party that night, finally approached me as I was tying my shoes. "Yo, can we talk?" he asked, his voice low. "Yeah, what's up?" He glanced around, making sure no one was listening. "Man, I don't know how to say this, but some of the guys are worried." "Worried about what?" "About the lawsuit, about the attention, about what it means for the team." I felt my jaw tighten. "What does it mean for the team?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Nothing, man. I don't think it means anything. But you know how it is. People talk, and some guys think you're bringing drama that we don't need right now." "Drama? I'm trying to expose a fraud who's been stealing from me for years. That's not drama. That's justice." "I know, bro, and I support you, but not everyone sees it that way." I stood up, grabbing my jersey. "Then those people can mind their own business." Marcus sighed. "Look, I'm just trying to give you a heads up. Some guys are talking about going to coach, asking him to, I don't know, keep you away from the team until this blows over." My blood went cold. "They want me benched?" "I don't think it'll come to that, but just be aware. That's all I'm saying." He walked away, leaving me standing there, feeling like the ground had just shifted beneath my feet. I couldn't believe it. My own teammates were turning on me. Practice that day was the worst I'd had in years. Every shot felt off. Every pass was a split second too late. My head wasn't in the game. It was everywhere else. Coach Williams blew the whistle and called me over. "What's going on with you today?" he asked, his arms crossed. "Nothing, coach." "Don't give me that. I've been watching you for 3 years. I know when something's wrong." I looked down at my shoes. "It's just everything. The lawsuit, the media, the guys." Coach's expression softened. "They're talking, huh?" "Yeah." He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Listen, I'm going to be straight with you. This situation is putting pressure on everyone. The front office is nervous, the sponsors are nervous, and yeah, some of your teammates are nervous too, but that doesn't mean you're alone. Feels like I am. You're not. You've got people in your corner, me, Dre. Hell, even some of the guys who are keeping their distance right now, they respect what you're doing. They're just scared. Scared of what? Scared that if they support you too loudly, they'll get caught in the crossfire. That's how it works in this league. Nobody wants to be collateral damage." I nodded, understanding but hating it all the same. "What do I do, coach?" "You keep your head down. You play your game, and you let the lawyers handle the rest. Don't give anyone a reason to doubt you. And if they doubt me anyway," he put a hand on my shoulder, "then you prove them wrong." I tried to take his advice. I really did. But it was hard to focus on basketball when my entire life felt like it was on trial. The media coverage got worse. Every day there was a new headline, a new accusation. David's legal team was working overtime to paint me as the bad guy. They leaked stories about me, twisted facts, made me look ungrateful, reckless, greedy. One article claimed I was suing David because I'd made bad investments and needed someone to blame. Another said I was trying to get out of my contract so I could sign with a bigger agent. A third suggested I was being manipulated by Jasmine, that she was the one pulling the strings. None of it was true, but that didn't matter. People believed it anyway. My phone was flooded with hate messages, random people telling me I was a sellout, a liar, a fraud. Some of them were creative with their insults. Others were just cruel. I stopped reading them, but I couldn't stop feeling them. One night, I was sitting in my living room staring at the TV but not really watching it, when there was a knock on my door. I looked through the peephole. It was my mom. I hadn't seen her in weeks. We'd talked on the phone a few times, but I'd been avoiding her. Not because I didn't want to see her, but because I didn't want her to see me like this. Broken, defeated, but now she was here, and I couldn't turn her away. I opened the door. "Hi, baby," she said, her voice soft. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I came to check on you. Can I come in?" I stepped aside and let her in. She walked into the living room and looked around, taking in the mess. The empty takeout containers, the scattered clothes, the general chaos. "When's the last time you cleaned?" she asked. "I don't know. I've been busy." She turned to look at me, her eyes filled with concern. "You look tired." "I am tired." She walked over and pulled me into a hug. I didn't realize how much I needed it until her arms were around me. "I'm sorry, baby," she whispered. I'm so sorry you're going through this. I pulled back, wiping my eyes. It's not your fault. I know, but that doesn't make it any easier to watch. We sat down on the couch, and for a while, we just sat in silence. It was the kind of silence only a mother and son could share. Comfortable, understanding. Finally, she spoke. Do you remember when you were 10 and you broke your arm? I smiled despite everything. Yeah, I tried to dunk on that rusty hoop behind the school. You were so upset. Not because your arm hurt, but because you thought you'd never play basketball again. I remember. And I told you, baby, sometimes we have to break before we can heal. Sometimes we have to fall apart before we can put ourselves back together. I looked at her. You think that's what's happening now? I know it is. You've been carrying so much weight for so long. The game, the money, the expectations, and you've been doing it all by yourself. But you can't do that forever. Eventually, something has to give. So what do I do? She took my hand. You let people help you. You stop trying to be strong all the time. And you remember who you are. Not who they say you are. Not who they want you to be. Who you really are. Her words hit me harder than I expected. Because she was right. I'd been so focused on proving everyone wrong, on winning the lawsuit, on protecting my image, that I'd forgotten the most important thing. I'd forgotten who I was. Thanks, Mom. She smiled. That's what I'm here for. She stayed for a few hours, helping me clean up the house, making me dinner, just being there. By the time she left, I felt a little lighter, a little more like myself. But the peace didn't last long. The next day, I got a call from Marcus Reed. We need to talk, he said. David's team just made a move. What kind of move? They're claiming you breached your contract with him. They're countersuing for damages. I felt my stomach drop. How much? $5 million. I nearly dropped the phone. $5 million? That's insane. I don't have that kind of money. I know. That's the point. They're trying to bankrupt you, to force you to drop the lawsuit. Can they do that? They can try. But we're not going to let them. We're going to fight this. But you need to be prepared. This is going to get worse before it gets better. I hung up and sat down, my head in my hands. $5 million. How had it come to this? I called Dre. They're countersuing, I told him. I heard. Marcus Reed's office called me. Asked if I'd be willing to testify. And? Of course I will. I'm not letting that bastard win. Thanks, man. Don't thank me. Just stay strong. We're going to get through this. But I wasn't sure anymore. I wasn't sure I had the strength to keep fighting. The countersuit made headlines immediately. The media had a field day with it. They painted me as someone who'd bitten off more than I could chew, someone who was in over his head. And maybe they were right. That night, I sat in my empty house, staring at my phone. I thought about calling Jasmine. I thought about calling my mom. I thought about calling anyone who might make me feel less alone, but I didn't. Instead, I just sat there in the dark, wondering how everything had gone so wrong so fast. The next few days were a blur. I went through the motions, practice, games, interviews, but I wasn't really there. I was going through the motions, but my mind was somewhere else. The team could tell. My stats started to slip. My shooting percentage dropped. I was making mistakes I hadn't made since my rookie year, and the fans noticed. They booed me when I missed a shot. They jeered when I turned the ball over. They chanted David's name just to get under my skin. It worked. After one particularly brutal game, I sat in the locker room alone, my head in my hands. Everyone else had left. Even Dre, I'd told him I needed space, and he'd respected that. But now I regretted it, because sitting there alone, I realized something. I was drowning, and I didn't know how to save myself. My phone buzzed. A text from Jasmine. I saw the game. You okay? I stared at the message for a long time before I finally typed back. No. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. I'm coming over. You don't have to. I know, but I want to. She showed up an hour later. She didn't say anything. She just sat down next to me and held my hand, and for the first time in weeks, I cried. I cried for everything I'd lost, for the trust I'd given away, for the friends I'd pushed away, for the person I used to be before all of this started. Jasmine didn't say anything. She just let me cry, let me fall apart, let me be human. When I finally stopped, she looked at me. You know what the problem is? She asked. What? You think you have to do this alone. I don't have a choice. Yes, you do. You have me. You have Dre. You have your mom. You have people who care about you. But you keep pushing us away because you think you have to be strong. I do have to be strong. No, you have to be honest. There's a difference. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw the truth in her eyes. She was right. I'd been so focused on being strong, on not showing weakness, that I'd forgotten what it meant to be real. I'm scared, I admitted. I know. I'm scared I'm going to lose everything. You won't. How do you know? She squeezed my hand. Because you're not alone. And as long as you remember that, you'll be okay. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that everything would work out, that David would lose, that I'd get my life back, that things would go back to normal. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. Things would never be normal again, because this wasn't just about the lawsuit anymore. This was about who I was and who I wanted to be, and I had to figure that out before it was too late. The next morning, I woke up with a new sense of clarity. I couldn't control what David did. I couldn't control what the media said. I couldn't control what my teammates thought, but I could control how I responded. I called Marcus Reed. I'm ready, I told him. Ready for what? To fight. Really fight. No holding back. No playing it safe. I want to go after David with everything we've got. There was a pause. You sure? I'm sure. All right then, let's do this. I hung up and looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't recognize the person staring back at me, but maybe that was okay. Maybe I needed to become someone new, someone stronger, someone who wouldn't let anyone control him ever again. And that started now. Marcus Reed's office was on the 20th floor of a glass building downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, and from where I sat, I could see the arena where I played, where I'd built my career, where I'd become someone. But right now, all I could think about was tearing down the man who'd tried to take it all from me. Marcus sat across from me, his hands folded on the desk. He was in his 50s, gray hair, sharp eyes, the kind of lawyer who looked like he'd seen everything and couldn't be surprised anymore. Before we move forward, I need to be clear about something, he said. Once we go on the offensive, David is going to escalate. He's going to dig into your past. He's going to look for anything he can use against you. Affairs, drug use, gambling, anything. I met his eyes. I'm clean. I've never touched drugs, never gambled, never cheated on anyone. Good. But that doesn't mean he won't try to fabricate something or twist the truth. You need to be ready for that. I am. Marcus nodded, satisfied. Then let's talk strategy. We're going to depose everyone in David's circle. His assistants, his accountants, his other clients. Someone knows something, and we're going to find out what. What about David himself? He'll be deposed too, and that's when we'll really nail him, because he's arrogant. He thinks he's untouchable, and arrogant people make mistakes. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a small spark of hope for the first time in weeks. When do we start? Tomorrow. The deposition started the next day. Marcus brought me to his office to watch via video feed. The first person up was Karen Mills, David's assistant for the past 5 years. She was nervous. You could see it in the way she fidgeted with her hands, the way she avoided looking directly at the camera. Marcus's associate, a sharp woman named Rachel Torres, led the questioning. Ms. Mills, how long have you worked for David Chen? 5 years. And during that time, what were your responsibilities? I managed his schedule, answered emails, coordinated meetings with clients. Did you ever handle financial transactions? Karen hesitated. Sometimes. Can you elaborate? I would process payments, transfer funds between accounts, things like that. Rachel slid a document across the table. Do you recognize this? Karen's face went pale. Yes. Can you tell us what it is? It's a wire transfer from one of David's accounts to an offshore account. And do you know what this transfer was for? Karen looked down at her hands. I was told it was for business expenses, but you didn't believe that, did you? Karen's voice was barely a whisper. No. Why not? Because there were too many of them. Transfers like this happened every month, sometimes more, and the amounts were always just under the reporting threshold. Rachel leaned forward. Did you ever ask David about these transfers? Once. And what did he say? Karen's eyes filled with tears. He told me to mind my own business, and if I didn't, I'd lose my job. I watched the screen. My jaw clenched. This was it. This was the proof we needed. Rachel continued. Ms. Mills, do you know where that money was going? No, but I have my suspicions. What are your suspicions? I think David was skimming money from his clients, taking a percentage off the top and hiding it in offshore accounts. And why do you think that? Because the numbers never added up. His clients would sign contracts for certain amounts, but the money that actually made it to their accounts was always less. Not by much, but enough to notice if you were paying attention. Rachel nodded. And were his clients paying attention? No, most of them trusted David completely. They never questioned him. I felt sick. How many other people had David done this to? How many other players had he stolen from? The deposition ended, and Marcus turned to me. That was good. Really good. Karen just gave us everything we need to prove David was running a scheme. What happens now? Now we depose the accountant, and then David himself. The accountant's deposition was even more damning. His name was Leonard Gross, and he'd been doing David's books for 10 years. At first, he tried to play dumb, said he didn't know anything about the offshore accounts, said David handled all of that himself, but Rachel didn't let him off that easy. Mr. Gross, you're a certified public accountant, correct? Yes. And you've been doing David Chen's accounting for 10 years? Yes. So you're telling me that in 10 years, you never once noticed irregularities in his financial records? Leonard shifted in his seat. I noticed some things. Like what? Like the offshore accounts, like the transfers that didn't match up with the reported income. And you didn't report this? I advised David to consult with a tax attorney. But you didn't report it to the authorities. Leonard looked down. No. Why not? Because David was my biggest client. If I reported him, I'd lose his business. Rachel leaned back, letting that sink in. So you knowingly allowed your client to commit fraud because you didn't want to lose his business. I didn't know it was fraud. I just knew something didn't look right. But you suspected it was fraud. I don't know. Rachel slid another document across the table. Do you recognize this? Leonard's face went white. Yes. What is it? It's an email from me to David. And what does it say? Leonard's voice was shaky. It says that if he continues with the offshore transfers, he could face legal consequences. And what did David say when you sent this email? He told me to delete it, and to never bring it up again. But you didn't delete it, did you? No. Why not? Leonard looked up, his eyes filled with something close to regret. Because I knew one day it would come back to haunt him, and I wanted proof that I'd warned him. I stared at the screen, unable to believe what I was hearing. David had been running a scam for years, and everyone around him had known. They'd just been too scared to do anything about it. Marcus turned to me, a small smile on his face. We've got him. But the biggest deposition was still to come. David's deposition was scheduled for the following week. I wanted to be there in person. I wanted to look him in the eye, but Marcus advised against it. You're too emotional, he said. And David will use that against you. Let Rachel handle it. Trust me. So I watched from Marcus's office again, my heart pounding as David walked into the room. He looked the same as always. Expensive suit, perfectly styled hair, that confident smile, like he didn't have a care in the world. But I could see it in his eyes. The anger, the fear. He knew he was cornered. Rachel started with the basics. Name, occupation. How long he'd been an agent. David answered smoothly, his voice calm and collected. Then Rachel went for the kill. Mr. Chen, are you familiar with these offshore accounts? She slid a stack of documents across the table. David barely glanced at them. I am. Can you tell us what these accounts are for? They're investment accounts. Perfectly legal. Investment accounts for whom? For myself. And where did the money in these accounts come from? David's jaw tightened. From my business. Your business as an agent? Yes. So you're saying this money came from commissions you earned representing your clients? That's correct. Rachel leaned forward. Then why do the amounts in these accounts not match the commissions reported on your tax returns? David hesitated. I don't know what you're talking about. Let me be more specific. According to your tax returns, you earned $2 million in commissions last year. But according to these bank statements, you deposited $5 million into these offshore accounts. Where did the extra $3 million come from? David's lawyer jumped in. My client doesn't have to answer that. Rachel smiled. Actually, he does. This is a deposition, not a trial. And if he refuses to answer, I'll ask the judge to compel him to. David glared at her. The money came from bonuses. Bonuses from whom? From my clients. Do you have documentation of these bonuses? No. Why not? Because they were informal agreements. Informal agreements? So you're saying your clients just handed you millions of dollars in cash with no documentation? Yes. Rachel raised an eyebrow. Mr. Chen, do you really expect us to believe that? David leaned back in his chair, his composure slipping. I don't care what you believe. That's the truth. Is it? Because we have testimony from your assistant that you were skimming money from your clients' contracts. We have testimony from your accountant that you were hiding money in offshore accounts to avoid taxes. And now you're telling us that your clients just gave you millions of dollars in undocumented bonuses? David's lawyer tried to interject again, but Rachel cut him off. Let me ask you something, Mr. Chen. Have you ever taken money from a client without their knowledge? David's face turned red. No. Have you ever manipulated a client's contract to benefit yourself? No. Have you ever threatened anyone to keep them from exposing your financial practices? David stood up, his hands slamming on the table. This is ridiculous. I'm done. Rachel didn't flinch. Sit down, Mr. Chen, or I'll have the judge hold you in contempt. David's lawyer put a hand on his shoulder, whispering something in his ear. Slowly, David sat back down, but the damage was done. He'd lost his cool, and everyone in that room had seen it. The deposition ended shortly after, and when the video feed cut off, Marcus turned to me with the biggest smile I'd ever seen on his face. We got him. He just buried himself. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. What happens now? Now we take all of this evidence to trial, and we destroy him. The trial was set for 3 months later. 3 months to prepare. 3 months to gather more evidence. 3 months to wait. But I didn't feel anxious anymore. I felt ready, because for the first time since this whole thing started, I knew I was going to win. The media coverage shifted after the depositions leaked. Suddenly, the narrative changed. People started questioning David, started digging into his past, started finding other clients who'd been screwed over. My phone started ringing with messages of support. Teammates who'd been distant started reaching out. Sponsors who'd pulled out started coming back. It felt like the tide was turning. One night, I got a call from Coach Williams. I just wanted to say I'm proud of you, he said. Thanks, Coach. I mean it. What you're doing, it takes guts. A lot of guys would have just taken the loss and moved on. But you didn't. You stood up for yourself. And that's something special. I didn't know what to say. I'm just trying to do the right thing. I know. And that's why you're going to win. After we hung up, I sat on my couch, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Jasmine came over that night. We sat on the porch, watching the stars. How are you feeling? She asked. Good. Better than I have in a long time. She smiled. I'm glad. We sat in silence for a while, just enjoying the moment. Then she spoke again. What are you going to do after this is all over? I don't know. Play basketball, I guess. Try to get my life back. And what about us? I looked at her. What about us? Do you think there's a chance we could try again? I thought about it. About everything we'd been through. About how she'd stood by me when everyone else had turned their backs. I don't know, I admitted. But I'd like to find out. She reached over and took my hand. Me too. We sat there for hours, talking about everything and nothing. About the past, about the future, about who we used to be and who we wanted to become. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. The next few weeks flew by. I threw myself back into basketball. My stats started to climb again. My confidence came back. The fans started cheering for me again. It felt like I was becoming myself again. Dre and I started hanging out more. We'd go to the gym after practice and shoot around just like we used to. You're playing like your old self again, he said one night. I feel like my old self again. He grinned. Good. Because we're going to need you when playoffs start. You think we'll make it? I know we will. And he was right. We made the playoffs, and we dominated. Game after game, we fought our way through the bracket. And with every win, I felt stronger, more confident, more like the player I'd always wanted to be. But in the back of my mind, I knew the real fight was still ahead. The trial was in 2 weeks, and everything I'd worked for, everything I'd fought for, would come down to that. But I wasn't scared anymore, because I knew the truth, and the truth was going to set me free. The courthouse was packed. Media crews lined the steps outside, cameras flashing as I walked through the crowd with Marcus Reed at my side. Reporters shouted questions. Microphones were shoved in my face. But I kept my head down and kept walking. This was it. The moment everything had been building toward. Inside, the courtroom was cold and sterile. Rows of wooden benches filled with spectators, journalists, and people I'd never seen before. On one side sat David and his legal team, 3 lawyers in expensive suits, all looking confident and prepared. On the other side sat me, Marcus, Rachel, and a small army of evidence. I glanced across the aisle and locked eyes with David for the first time in months. He didn't look away. He just stared at me with that same arrogant expression, like he still thought he was going to win. But I could see something else there, too. Something he was trying to hide. Fear. The judge entered, and everyone stood. Judge Margaret Harlow was in her 60s, gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, sharp eyes that missed nothing. She'd been on the bench for 20 years, and according to Marcus, she had a reputation for being fair but ruthless. "Be seated," she said, her voice firm. Everyone sat, and the trial began. The first few days were procedural, opening statements, witness testimonies. Marcus laid out our case methodically, piece by piece, building a narrative that was impossible to ignore. He showed the jury the bank statements, the emails, the wire transfers. He brought in Karen Mills, who testified about the offshore accounts and David's threats. He brought in Leonard Gross, who testified about the financial irregularities he'd warned David about. With each witness, the case against David grew stronger. But David's lawyers fought back. They tried to paint me as a disgruntled client who didn't understand the complexities of the business. They tried to claim the offshore accounts were legitimate investment vehicles. They tried to discredit every witness we brought forward, and for a while, it seemed like they might succeed. The jury looked confused, overwhelmed, like they didn't know what to believe. Then it was time for David to take the stand. I sat forward in my seat, my heart pounding as he was sworn in. This was the moment he'd have to answer for everything. Rachel stood and approached the witness stand. "Mr. Chen, you've heard the testimony over the past few days. You've seen the evidence. Do you deny that you operated offshore accounts without your client's knowledge?" David adjusted his tie, looking calm. "I don't deny having offshore accounts, but those accounts were for my own investments. They had nothing to do with my clients." "Is that so? Then can you explain why the amounts deposited into those accounts match the discrepancies in your client's contract payments?" "Coincidence." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Coincidence? Mr. Chen, we're talking about millions of dollars. Are you really asking this jury to believe that's a coincidence?" David leaned back. "I'm asking this jury to look at the facts. I've been an agent for 15 years. I've represented dozens of players. If I were stealing from them, don't you think more people would have come forward? Maybe they didn't know. Maybe, like my client, they trusted you completely." David's jaw tightened. "Your client is lying. He's trying to get out of a contract he regrets signing. That's all this is." Rachel walked over to the evidence table and picked up a document. "This is an email from you to Leonard Gross, your accountant. In it, you instruct him to, and I quote, 'Keep the offshore transfers off the books.' Can you explain what you meant by that?" David hesitated. "I meant that those transfers were personal and didn't need to be included in my business accounting." "But they were business transfers, weren't they? They were commissions taken from your client's contracts." "No. Then where did the money come from?" David's composure was starting to crack. "I've already answered this. It came from bonuses." Rachel turned to the jury. "Bonuses that have no documentation. No contracts, no paper trail. Mr. Chen, do you really expect us to believe that your clients just gave you millions of dollars in cash with no record of it?" David's voice rose. "Yes, because that's what happened." Rachel walked closer to the witness stand, her voice calm but cutting. "Mr. Chen, did you or did you not threaten Karen Mills when she questioned your financial practices?" "No. So she's lying." "Yes. And Leonard Gross? Is he lying too?" "I don't know why he'd say those things. Maybe he's bitter. Maybe he's trying to save his own reputation." Rachel nodded slowly. So everyone's lying except you? David glared at her. I'm telling the truth. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've built an entire career on lies, on manipulation, on stealing from people who trusted you. David's lawyer jumped up. Objection. Argumentative. Judge Harlow nodded. Sustained. Ms. Torres, stick to the questions. Rachel smiled. Of course, Your Honor. She turned back to David. Mr. Chen, let me ask you this. Do you care about your clients, or do you just care about the money? David's face turned red. I care about my clients. I've dedicated my life to their success. Then why did you steal from them? I didn't steal from anyone. His voice echoed through the courtroom. The jury looked startled. Even his own lawyers looked uncomfortable. Rachel let the silence hang in the air for a moment before she spoke again. No further questions. David stepped down, his face flushed, his hands shaking, and I knew right then that we'd won. The closing arguments came a few days later. Marcus stood before the jury, his voice steady and confident. Ladies and gentlemen, this case is about trust, about a young man who worked his entire life to achieve his dreams, only to have those dreams exploited by someone he trusted. David Chen didn't just steal money. He stole opportunities. He stole security. He stole peace of mind. And he did it all while pretending to be a friend, a mentor, a protector. Marcus gestured to the evidence table. The evidence is clear. The offshore accounts, the missing money, the threats, the lies. David Chen is guilty, and it's time for him to be held accountable. David's lawyer gave his closing argument next, trying one last time to paint me as the villain. But his words felt hollow, empty. The jury saw through it. After 2 days of deliberation, they came back with a verdict. I sat in the courtroom, my hands gripping the armrests, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might explode. The foreman stood. In the case of Jackson versus Chen, we find in favor of the plaintiff. I exhaled, my entire body sagging with relief. We'd won. The judge ordered David to pay back every dollar he'd stolen, plus damages. She also referred the case to the district attorney for potential criminal charges. David stood there, his face pale, his lawyers whispering urgently in his ears, but there was nothing they could do. It was over. As I left the courtroom, reporters swarmed me, but this time I didn't run. I didn't hide. I stopped and faced them. I just want to say thank you to everyone who stood by me, to my family, to my friends, to my legal team. This was never about the money. It was about the truth. And today, the truth won. The cameras flashed. The questions kept coming, but I didn't care. I'd said what I needed to say. That night, Jasmine, Dre, my mom, and I went out to dinner. Nothing fancy, just a quiet place where we could be together. I'm proud of you, baby, my mom said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. Thanks, Mom. Dre raised his glass. To the truth. We all clinked glasses, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could finally relax. What are you going to do now? Jasmine asked. I thought about it. I'm going to play basketball, I'm going to live my life, and I'm going to make sure I never forget who I am again. She smiled. That sounds like a good plan. The weeks that followed were surreal. The media coverage shifted completely. I went from being the villain to being the hero. Sponsors came back. Fans cheered louder than ever. My teammates treated me with respect again. But the best part wasn't the vindication. It was the peace. I'd spent so long fighting, so long carrying the weight of the lawsuit, that I'd forgotten what it felt like to just be. Now, I could breathe again. One night, I was sitting on my porch when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Hello? Is this Jackson? The voice was unfamiliar. Yeah. Who's this? My name is Marcus Williams. I play for the Hawks. I heard about what you did, about the lawsuit. I sat up. Yeah? I think my agent's been doing the same thing to me, and I want to know if you can help. I felt my chest tighten. What's your agent's name? David Chen. I closed my eyes. Of course. Yeah, I said. I can help. Over the next few months, more players came forward, guys David had represented, guys he'd stolen from, guys he'd manipulated, and one by one, we helped them get justice. David Chen's empire crumbled. He lost his license. He lost his clients. He lost everything. And I didn't feel sorry for him. Not even a little bit. Because he'd brought it on himself. As the season continued, I played some of the best basketball of my life. We made it to the conference finals. And even though we didn't win the championship, it didn't matter, because I'd already won the only fight that mattered. One night after a game, I sat in the locker room alone. The lights were dim, the building was quiet, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Dre walked in, a towel around his neck. "You good, man?" "Yeah, I'm good." He sat down next to me. "You know, I've been thinking." "About what?" "About everything we went through. The lawsuit, the media, all of it. And I realized something." "What's that?" "You're stronger than you think. You always have been. You just needed to remember it." I looked at him. My brother, my teammate, my friend. "Thanks, man, for everything." He clapped me on the shoulder. "That's what brothers do." We sat there in silence for a while, just two kids from nothing who'd made it to the top and survived. Later that night, I drove home. The streets were empty. The city was quiet. And as I pulled into my driveway, I saw Jasmine sitting on my porch, waiting for me. I got out of the car and walked over. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "I wanted to see you." I sat down next to her. "I'm glad you did." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "I'm proud of you. You know that, right?" "Yeah, I know." "So what now?" I thought about it, about everything I'd been through, about the person I used to be and the person I'd become. Now, I just live. I play ball. I spend time with people I care about, and I make sure I never lose myself again. She smiled. "That sounds perfect." We sat there for a while, watching the stars, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. A few months later, I was invited to speak at a conference for young athletes. Kids who were just starting their careers. Kids who were about to face the same pressures I'd faced. I stood on that stage looking out at all those hopeful faces, and I told them my story. I told them about David, about the lawsuit, about the pain and the fear and the doubt, but I also told them about the strength I'd found, about the people who'd stood by me, about the importance of never forgetting who you are. "The world is going to try to change you," I said. "People are going to try to control you, to use you, to make you into something you're not. But you have to remember one thing. You are not your contract. You are not your stats. You are not your endorsements. You are a human being, and you deserve to be treated like one." The room was silent. "So trust yourself. Surround yourself with people who care about you, and never ever let anyone take away your voice." When I finished, the room erupted in applause. And as I walked off that stage, I knew I'd found my purpose, not just to play basketball, but to help others avoid the mistakes I'd made, to be the voice for those who were too scared to speak up, to be the change I wished I'd had. Months turned into years. My career continued. I won awards. I signed new contracts, this time with an agent I trusted, someone who treated me like a person, not a paycheck. Jasmine and I got back together. We took it slow, but it felt right, like we were finally ready for each other. Dre and I stayed close. We played together for a few more years before he got traded. But even after that, we stayed brothers. My mom came to every home game. She'd sit in the front row cheering louder than anyone. And every time I stepped on that court, I remembered where I came from. I remembered the kid with the milk crate hoop. I remembered the promises I'd made. And I remembered the fight it took to keep them. One night, years later, I was lying in bed, unable to sleep. I got up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Thank you." I frowned, typing back. "Who is this?" "A player you helped. You don't know me, but you saved my career. I just wanted you to know." I stared at the message, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. "You're welcome. Stay strong." I set the phone down and looked back out at the city. I'd lost a lot along the way. Trust, time, peace of mind. But I'd gained something too. I'd gained myself, and that was worth more than anything. As I climbed back into bed, I thought about that night. The night my neighbor called. The night everything changed. And I realized something. That call wasn't the beginning of the end. It was the beginning of everything. The beginning of truth. The beginning of strength. The beginning of me. And I wouldn't change it for the world.